Michael Badnarik is a constitutional scholar, author, and teacher. He is a longtime political activist and privacy advocate. He has developed computer programs to simulate nuclear power plants and the stealth bomber. Michael was a Libertarian candidate for the Texas House of Representatives in 2000 and 2002, and the Libertarian Party's nominee for President of the United States in 2004. He's also run as a Libertarian in Texas Congressional 10th District in the 2006 general election. He now devotes his time to lighting the fires of liberty by lecturing and teaching classes on the Constitution and Bill of Rights. His book, Good to be a King, is used as the text for his classes. One way or another, Michael is determined to change the course of American politics in the direction of world peace. He has visited with us before, and it is my sincere pleasure to welcome back to the Global Freedom Report, Michael Badnarik. Hi, Michael. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks, Brent.
Good to have you back. It's been about 10 months since you were with us last. My first question, and I tend to ask this of people who come back on the show, how would you characterize the changes in how governments in the U.S. relate to the people over the last 10 months?
It's continuing to get worse. I used to tell people we were sliding slowly towards socialism. We are now practically in free fall in the direction of a totalitarian dictatorship.
Wow, that's quite a comment. That's quite a comment. I mean, that's not pulling any punches at all. Would you, along those lines, would you comment on the goings-on in Quartzsite, Arizona, where I'm sure you must be familiar with it, where town officials have apparently attempted to install martial law, removing officials who don't go along with their antics?
Martial law is an open admission that there is no constitution. The martial law indicates that it's military law, and, the people with the guns are making the rules. Presumably, the people who are in government get what limited authority they're supposed to have from the Constitution. If they announce martial law, they are admitting that there is no Constitution, which immediately eliminates any justification for their act. At that point in time, people should realize that it's every man and woman for themselves.
Well, and that's a very ominous but very true statement. Have you been following the Quartzsite situation?
No, not really. I've been, just struggling to keep food on the table.
Unfortunately, is that it's not the only situation that we've come across. It's just the one that's been, most popularized. But we've come across a number of situations where local communities, not even the state, but local communities are starting to impose these intrusive and oppressive ordinances, where the town council ordains that this will be the case. We just heard the mayor in Philadelphia is now imposing a weekend curfew on, I think, after 9 o'clock at night in certain communities. You can't be on the road or you could be taken away. And if you're a minor and you're taken away, your parents, if they don't come get you, you could end up in Child Protective Services just for being out on the street. What has America come to?
Well, I haven't had a curfew since I got out of high school. And anybody who tries to tell me to go home and go to bed early better have some way to enforce it, because I don't take that kind of instruction from anybody.
It's amazing to me that all this is happening, and at the same time, it's not overly surprising, considering what we've been working with. Does your knowledge of nuclear power plants, the way you develop the computer programs, does it give you any insight into the potential ramifications of the various nuclear leaks that have taken place since the tsunami and earthquake in Japan?
I do have that kind of knowledge. In fact, with very little additional training, I would have qualified to be a nuclear operator. That was not a job that I wanted, however. And the point that I was trying to make is that you don't design a nuclear plant anticipating a 1-mile diameter meteor hitting the nuclear plant. I mean, if that happens, nuclear plant's going to be pretty well devastated, and you're going to have some significant problems. Conversely, people do not anticipate an earthquake of 9 on the Richter scale. I mean, that's Hollywood movie quality earthquake. And the only thing that I can criticize Japan for was that they had their backup diesel generators at a level below water level. So when the tsunami hit, it overflowed the water barricade and basically flooded the diesel generators, so they were unable to produce the electricity they needed under the emergency. That was an unfortunate oversight. I don't really know, and I don't trust the mainstream media to tell me the truth about what happened, but undoubtedly the reactors will be unusable, and there is undoubtedly radiation leakage within the containment structures. Now, where it goes from there is really kind of up to the circumstances. I don't know if there were breaches in the containment structure, but I know that
there have been reports that there have been not a meltdown, but what was it called? A melt something else, worse than a meltdown, and that radiation had actually leaked into the ocean.
And I understand that. The other thing that the general public is unfamiliar with is the levels of radiation. When you go to the doctor and have an EKG, the doctor is measuring electrical impulses in your heart muscle. So we don't run around going, oh my gosh, don't touch Brent because he's electrified, because the electrical impulses are so small. Well, nuclear power is safe because we can measure incredibly low levels of radiation. It's impossible to hide the radiation. And anybody that sits out on a beach trying to get a suntan is deliberately absorbing radiation from the sun. So again, I don't know what levels of radiation were in the water. Just because they can measure them doesn't necessarily mean that they were dangerous. I mean, certainly it is critical if they are unable to control it, because that means that it can always get worse.
All right. Now, last week, was it last week? Yeah, I guess it was last week. Congress agreed to raise the debt ceiling, pretty much without guaranteeing any spending reductions. All they really promised was to reduce future spending increases. Part of that agreement involved the creation of something called a super Congress, whose purpose is to fast-track legislation by bypassing open debate. What can you tell us about this super Congress? First, is it proposed or has it been created?
I don't know. I'm busy loading magazines waiting for them to try to create it. The one thing that I can tell you unequivocally is that it is unconstitutional. If you have a job, your supervisor is somebody that is higher in stature than you. You have to, listen to what your supervisor does or tells you to do. If you have subordinates, they are below you on the hierarchy, and you can give them instructions. So this is not a subcommittee that Congress has created to, do monotonous paperwork. Simply by labeling it a super Congress, they are implying that this super Congress has more authority than Congress. And I don't think you have to study the Constitution very long to realize it's not in there. I mean, you can't do that. And I point to Nazi Germany. This is how the Holocaust started, because they started to give Adolf Hitler and his Congress, incredible power, unlimited power, because, oh my gosh, we've got, a terrible economic situation, and, Hitler has promised to solve our problems. All we have to do is give him more information. If that is not a carbon copy of what is happening in the United States at this very moment, we've got some terrible economic problems. Oh my gosh, they're threatening us with, shutting down the government, not being able to pay Social Security. They spent, I don't know how many weeks on TV threatening us with that boogeyman. And so all we have to do to solve this problem is to give this, committee of 12 people more authority than the Constitution allows them to have.
And it's also reminiscent for those who are in the world of fantasy rather than the world of reality. It's very reminiscent of the third episode of the Star Wars saga, where the Chancellor took over as Emperor with temporary powers because of the crisis facing civilization. And there's always a crisis that ushers in that kind of power. I agree. This seems to be blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, even to suggest that the framers would approve of appropriating taxpayer dollars while simultaneously excluding 98% of Congress, well, it seems outrageous. But question is, since you know it's unconstitutional, and I know it's unconstitutional, you would think enough out of 535 members of the House and Senate would know that it's unconstitutional. So how do they get away with it in the first place?
Because they have no conscience. They have no set of ethics other than theft. They don't care if the Constitution allows it or not. Because you leave a group of children in a room with a bowl of M&Ms. Is there any doubt in your mind that the children are going to eat the M&Ms as soon as you leave the room? Well, if you are letting Congress debate on whether or not they're going to take more of your money, I mean, does it take a congressional study to figure out that they are going to saddle us with even more debt than we already have? At least the children will pause momentarily before they eat the M&Ms because, well, they know that it's wrong. I doubt that Congress would hesitate for a heartbeat. They don't care if it's wrong. They are absolutely sociopath.
The thing is that what you're talking about is, Congress is not the House and the Senate. It is 535 individuals, and enough of them have to be conscienceless, the way you are saying, in order to create this sociopathic entity. And that's the amazing thing. How do you get so many people to go along with such unconscionable acts?
Money. I mean, these people are going to be, just by being a member of Congress, they are getting far more money than you and I will ever make in a year. And as long as they are a member of Congress for 4 years, they automatically get 100% pension when they leave Congress.
That's depressing to have it all boiled down to money. All right, let's push the envelope. Those in Congress who disregard the Constitution are operating outside of the supreme law of the land, meaning they are outlaws, meaning they are criminals. At what point do freedom-loving people stand up against criminals in their government? When are the proverbial first shots finally fired?
That is an excellent question. If I knew the answer to that, I would be, placing my money on all the right places just before it happened. If you and I had argued 15 years ago that the American people would allow the Patriot Act, Military Commissions Act, I would have laughed at you, Brent. I would have said that you were drinking way too much because the American people would never tolerate it.
Actually, I was arguing that 15 years ago, and people were indeed laughing at me.
And oh my God, I apologize for, a conversation that we never had. I never would have dreamed that the American people could be so lethargic, so passive, so apathetic when it pertains to their physical survival. I have no idea what it will take to get people off the couch and, into the things they need to do. And I just wrote a newsletter recently that suggested if members of the ATF dragged people out into the street, lined them up alongside the wall, and shot them dead, Valentine's Day massacre style, that most people would just close the drapes and ignore it, pretend it never happened.
If it wasn't covered by Fox and CNN, you're right.
It's like, I don't know. Honest to God, I have no idea what it will take to waste this sleeping time.
Let me try this then. Recently, the Indiana Supreme Court issued an outrageous ruling stating, and I've read the ruling, they actually said this, that citizens have no right to resist illegal entries into their own homes by police. If the police illegally come into their homes, they have no right to resist. Would you comment on the ruling and tell us what you believe Indianans should now do if they're illegally invaded by cops?
They should shoot to kill, is what they should do. If you're walking down the sidewalk and someone starts to choke you or attempt to hurt you, most people will respond that they're going to poke them in the eye, kick them in the shin, do some level of physical force to stop the attack. Then my question is, who gave you permission to do that? Did you call the chief of police on your cell phone? Do you have a letter from the governor of the state that allows you to do self-defense? And people look at me like I'm insane. Well, it is. It's an insane concept. By virtue of the fact that you are alive, you have an intrinsic biological right to self-defense. It's encoded into your DNA. It's not possible for you to stand there and allow yourself to be choked without doing something. And for the Indiana Supreme Court to announce publicly that we do not have a right to defend ourselves from an out-of-control government is beyond outrageous. Anybody who comes to my door, I don't care if you're wearing a badge and a uniform, you better knock, speak politely, and if you have a complaint, you better have it in a written, warrant. Anybody who comes through the front door unannounced is not going home again.
Yeah, and you see, what you're hearing, folks, is an American patriot. That's the principle. What he just said is exactly the principle on which the entire republic was founded, that your land is your castle. Because in Old England, if you were a commoner, you couldn't own land. It was a brand new concept that we the people, we are the rulers. It's our land. It was all new. You couldn't own land back then. That's what you're defending. That's what Michael is talking about. Michael, Ron Paul is running for president. He's already won several key straw polls. And the American people appear very close to the end of their tolerance. And we were starting to see what we're calling Operation Pushback in some areas. They want to change from the standard Republicrats in Washington. That is for certain. However, mainstream media has gone to great effort to minimize Dr. Paul's candidacy. Do you believe Ron Paul has a chance in today's climate of actually winning the presidency in 2012?
Oh, man, I don't predict the Kentucky Derby races or World Series events. I understand that a lot of people are upset. I understand that Ron Paul is continuing to gather support. But it's very much like the movies where you have a train running down the track and a car full of people, driving hell-bent to try to cross the track at the intersection before the train gets there. And in order to generate suspense for the movie, it's going to be neck and neck, and, sometimes the car makes it and sometimes the car doesn't. I don't know. That's how close I see this. Is it possible? Yeah. It's absolutely possible if enough Americans shake off this intellectual stupor and recognize we the people do not need permission from the government to exist. We are here. We have a right to be here. On the other hand, government does require public approval to exist. The Declaration of Independence explicitly says that any government that is destructive of our right, we have the right to alter or abolish that government. I don't know, what does abolish mean to you? We can get rid of it.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, we have to have, widespread support. You and I and Ron Paul together are just not enough of a threat.
All right, let me ask now in a related question. Considering the health care Obamacare debacle, the immigration debacle. He's by executive order trying to grant amnesty to all the illegals, and the economic horror that we're all facing. Do you believe Obama has a legitimate chance of getting reelected?
A legitimate chance of reelecting? No. No, I don't think that he was legitimately elected the first time. I am so jaded and cynical that I don't believe that our election system actually reflects the will of the people. With all the electronic voting machines and all the mainstream media hype, I think that elections are nothing more than Shakespeare play. I mean, if you and I went to see Hamlet, we're not going to sit in the theater before the play starts and go, gosh, I wonder what happens to Hamlet at the end. It's like, come on, Brent, read the script. We already know what's going to happen. So, to me, the elections in the United States are not free and open. They are predetermined. And, the bankers and people with all the money are the ones who manipulate the media and the elections to make it appear that, people have a voice in selecting their representative.
I'll put you on the short list to guest host this show. Very good. All right. Now, here, I hope I'm not opening up a can of emotional worms for you, but you've run as a Libertarian candidate for several federal offices, including president. I've always felt inspired by your campaigns. You always seem to instill hope to anyone who will listen, hope for a freer tomorrow. Considering all that has happened over the past relatively few years, have you lost any portion of your optimism that the American people can restore freedom and the rule of law to the United States?
I am sad to admit that I have lost a lot of my optimism. I ran for president. I mean, I knew that it was a long shot. I didn't expect to go to Washington. But I did expect to raise awareness of these issues that by now, we would have had, people filling the streets, 2 or 3 million people in Washington, D.C. demanding, that our rights be respected. In the summer of last year, the Libertarian National Convention was held in St. Louis, and I had people literally begging me to run for national chair. The discussion lasted until about 2 o'clock in the morning, begging me to run for national chair. And I asked them why. And they said, well, because you're such a wonderful leader. And I said, well, that may be true. I said, but libertarians are not followers. I said, if I'm walking down the street with a fuzzy hat and a baton, that doesn't make me a parade. I need to have, if you're going to be a leader, you have to have people following you. And in my experience over the last 12 years, I teach my Constitution class and people tell me how wonderful I am, and then nothing happens.
I know the feeling, Michael.
They talk a great game. It's like, oh, Michael, you're doing such a great job. Just short of 2 years ago, I had a heart problem and ended up in the hospital. I got 2 shopping bags filled with Get Well cards. And I want to thank everybody who took the time to put a stamp on an envelope. I sincerely appreciate your concerns. But unfortunately, 60 to 70% of these Get Well cards said, Michael, you can't die. You have a responsibility to restore freedom. I felt like they were telling me to get my ass out of the hospital bed and, bring them their freedom on a silver platter, as if that was my job. And since that point, I've changed my motto. Most people know that I'm lighting the fires of liberty one heart at a time. Well, now I point out that when I die, liberty is no longer my problem.
I have a clip that I pulled out. I just wanted to play because you'll probably remember saying this, but I believe this is more of, if I had to identify who is Michael Badnarik in 60 seconds or less, this is how I would do it.
How bad
do things have to get before you do something? Do they have to take away all your property? Do they have to license every activity that you want to engage in? Do they have to be throwing you on cattle cars before you start to say, now wait a minute, I don't think this is a good idea? How long is it going to be before you finally resist and say, no, I will not comply?
And I play that regularly. I mean, I think that speaks more of the character of Michael Badnarik in 60 seconds or less than just about anything else. Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate that.
Do you have any new books, newsletters, blogs, or anything you want to mention?
I don't have any new books, although I've had several people ask me to write another one. I do try to keep people up to speed with my newsletter. You can see all the previous articles or sign up and subscribe for the newsletter at my website, constitutionpreservation.org.
Excellent. How about any live appearances or any speaking events or seminars or anything of that sort that you're planning on?
I do have 2 on schedule. Unfortunately, it's only 2. Ever since the economy has gotten this bad, people are unwilling or unable to spend money to learn the Constitution. But I will be offering my class for free on Constitution Day, September 17th, at IUPUI in Indianapolis. That's Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis. The venue hasn't been determined.
Will the information be on your website?
Absolutely. And I will update that as soon as the college students tell me where we're going to have it. And then I will be teaching my class for money, of course, after the Illinois State Convention in October. And both of those events are on my website.
Excellent. And by the way, just a comment. I heard from one of my correspondents the other day that people are afraid also. Afraid to attend a seminar, afraid to talk to a correspondent, afraid. That's showing up as well.
Yeah. When I was on the presidential campaign, I met a gentleman in New Mexico who assiduously avoided rallies because he was convinced the FBI was taking hidden camera videos and, documenting all the license plates in the parking lot. And when a woman asked me if I was afraid that the government was going to kill me, my response was, well, they can kill me, but they can't scare me, and I'm not going to stop fighting for liberty unless I achieve liberty or they kill me. Those are the only 2 options. And this gentleman realized that by his paranoia, his refusal to attend meetings, his passion for staying off a government list made him realize that he had already lost. He had already surrendered to this government power because he wouldn't fight against it. So I think it's pretty clear, if you're ever in a fight and you keep your hands in your pockets and you refuse to participate, you're going to lose.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you can understand why, if I have a hero in this movement, Michael is it. Michael, I want to thank you very much for spending this time today. And I want to say to you, as a fellow freedom fighter and patriot, I want to say to you that while I agree with everything, without exception, including your jadedness and including your reduced faith that the American people will do anything to reverse this, I can tell you with absolute certainty that those of us who do care about liberty and who do care about truth, and we do make up some kind of movement, that we are far better off with you than without you.
Well, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to, jump on a hand grenade because it's a traumatic way to die. But unless we get far more people, to join our ranks, then you and I and Davy Crockett are just standing around at the Alamo waiting for this to be over.
No argument there. No argument there. I just wanted to make sure you understand that even though, see, I still see it as a mathematician. Okay, I see it very precisely. And I still see it that the jury is out. The government never knows when to stop, so it keeps pushing and pushing. And more and more people are being pushed as far as they're willing to be pushed and are therefore pushing back. Now, is it enough? I don't know. Will it be enough? I don't know. Okay, but I still see that the jury is out, and I know that we are far stronger with you than if you do get into that despair. Give me a call, because I get there also, and hearing from people like you help.
I appreciate that. I will give you a call.
Excellent. Michael Badnarik has been my guest. www.constitutionpreservation.org. And that's where you'll find out everything there is to know about Michael Badnarik. Thanks again, Michael. God bless you, and let freedom ring.
Thank you.